I want to talk. I have a couple more questions about Abilify, but particularly I want to talk about the opioid crisis. But you said something at the end of the last segment that I want to just pick your brain about, and that is you've been practicing this type of plaintiff law for decades now, and you've gone after some of the biggest companies in the world, if not the biggest companies in the world, who have created products, who have distributed products, who have sold products, who have committed offenses against the environment, all basically to cut corners so that their profit margin come off and they can sort of push these externalities onto society. Has it gotten worse? Has it gotten worse? I mean, are these corporations finding, because there's less accountability at places like the Department of Justice, let's say, that they can get away with more, and they're just making a calculation? We may have to spend $400 million worth of fines, but that's okay if we're making $4 billion worth of profits.
Yeah, it's worse. It's worse than that. They say we're going to calculate. We have to spend. We're going to calculate that, for example, we have dumped opioids onto the public arena, knowing that what was going to happen is what we call opiate was diversion. We knew there were going to be pill mills. We built it into our business plan. We knew there was going to be a drug trafficking. We built it into our business plan. We knew that this whole list of things. We knew pharmacies were going to be overprescribing. That's part of our business plan. And so understand, they do the calculations. They know, for example, McKesson paid in excess of $100 million a fine. They're one of the distributors. The big three are McKesson, Amerisource, and Cardinal. All of them have paid $100 million or more in fines for doing these things. But so what? They made $6 and $7 billion a year. So how does that hurt them? There's no harm done. There's no harm. So they're able to build. That's
just basically that's just another line item on their budget, right?
That's exactly
we got to pay for trucks. We got to pay for fines.
Yeah. When you look at the finances of most of these big corporations, they just write it off as a cost of doing business. Now, there's the other part of it, though. The other part is, how about the human lives that are lost? Now, right now, for example, I'm going after the distributors, those three distributors I just mentioned. I'm going after them on behalf of the cities and the state, the cities and the counties. I am not handling the AG cases. This is not a tobacco. This is not a repeat of tobacco. This is a different approach. I handle tobacco, as you know, and I think in the end, I don't know that the money actually ended up where it should have gone completely. Here, you have a county, for example, that lost $120 million because of the opioid crisis, where they had to have extra hospitalization, they had to have extra ER, they had to have extra police, they had to have extra dependency court problems where, used to be 5 children a year were taken away from the parents. Now it's 80 children a year because of the drug problem. So they had all these costs that were built into this opioid dump. Okay? The distributors, here's what's so amazing about this story. The distributors in 1970 were assigned the role as the gatekeeper. They were the people who were supposed to be the gatekeeper. They were the people who were supposed to make sure this didn't happen. And they were given special licenses for that problem. Well, so year 1 and year 2, it's very obvious that it's happening. As soon as they start selling year 1, year 2, they take a look. They're selling in year 1, they're selling about $150 million worth of the opioid. Year 2, it's $400 million. And then what ends up happening is they start seeing what's happening. See, their argument, Sam, is that this wasn't foreseeable, that all we are is a distributor, gee whiz, we didn't do anything wrong, we didn't see this coming. Let's go ahead and give them that for year 1 and year 2. But what about year 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, where they're making $6, $7, $8 billion a year, and the opioid crisis is so bad that heroin has come in as the tail of the crisis? In other words, opioids come through, people get addicted, heroin comes through. Those same people that got addicted on opioids are now using heroin. So this problem is not over. I mean, the opioid crisis is not yesterday's news. It's happening right now in places like Ohio, in West Virginia, Kentucky, Alabama, all of these cities that used to be Pleasantville, USA, are now regarded as Zombieland, Sam. They literally, there's a vernacular out there, and that is, we created a new Zombieland in Columbus, Ohio, wherever it may be. And so the problem is so pervasive. And understand, here's another example of government saying, oh, well, we're going to fine the heck out of them. Well, you know, $100 million fine doesn't mean anything. At some point, Sam, you got to start putting CEOs in prison.
Right.
And then culture changes. Then they say, well, you know, Uncle Joe did this with his company and he went to prison. Maybe I shouldn't do this with my company.
I mean, it really is stunning, and the devastation continues to mount. I mean, to this day, we're seeing elevated mortality rates. We're seeing increasing overdoses, and it like you say, it has destroyed communities. And this is when we talk about externalizing, you know, the social costs for profit. That this is a perfect example of it, right? I mean,
oh no, you can't get a better example. You can't get a better example. They didn't care. Look, they've made all their money. They left town. Now they've left Zombieland behind, and now the heroin and meth producers, they're in big time. There's a city down in Mexico called Jalisco, Mexico, that is become part of the industry. They bring in black tar heroin, and they count on following the demographics of the opioid distributors. In other words, they know, okay, they've been
It's a
here.
roadmap. They can look at what the distribution numbers are in different
course.
states and counties and
Of
whatnot, and
course.
say, this is where we go.
This is where
right
we
now.
go.
This is where our market. This
Let's
is basically a a market report, essentially.
Yeah, let's see who's had the most overdoses. Let's see where there's the biggest problem. And understand, let me throw one other thing real quickly. The salespeople who work for these companies like McKesson and Cardinal, they live right down the road. They see the headlines every day. They hear the newspapers news reports every day. They hear the radio spot every day. They drive by the pill mill every day. And they want to say, oh, gee, we didn't know.
Yeah.